Hey there, me in the future, or possibly my little child that I forced to watch this to show you what the hell we went through to get you here. I just wanted to do video recording of how this is all going so far. Essentially, what I've found out is that I have PCOS. Gone through a lot of back and forth trying to figure out what the issue is. I've never had a regular period. I've always had issues with acne, with body hair being thick and unruly and in places where I think that it shouldn't be, and all that kind of stuff like that. I mentioned it to my doctor when I was maybe like 18, 19, and she was basically like, table it. Right now you're fine. Here's your birth control. We'll figure it out later. I said, okay. Time went on. I started watching Ellie and Jared's videos. Probably their first video I saw was when their first son was born, and then I went back and I watched a bunch of videos that they had of her, of them struggling with PCOS and her talking about her experience of what she was experiencing as far as her symptoms and their fertility journey and all the problems that they'd had trying to conceive, and everything that she was saying that was her symptoms of PCOS. I was in the back of my mind going, oh, that sounds like me. I have that. I do that. I've had that issue. And I was like, maybe I have this. So I did a lot of research, Googling my brain out, essentially. And I was able to find a bunch of other symptoms of PCOS that I also had that she didn't even mention. And I was like, okay, I think I have this. But again, I'll table it until it's more of an issue. Silas is he's trying to be a part of the video here. Here he is. He's like, Mom, this isn't what I wanted. I just wanted to eat the camera straight. But then, so then last year we got married. We got married in June 27th, 2015. And we knew we were going to wait a little bit, but not that long, to start having kids. My goal was at least to wait a year. I wanted to at least have that first year just to experience us being married and living together and having all those experiences, just the two of us. We thought that we were going to wait 2 to 3 years, but halfway through to toward the end of our first year of marriage, I was like, you know what, I just feel the time is right. I don't feel like I want to wait. I feel like I want to start trying. So we were talking about it, going back and forth about it, and it got to the point where I was basically like, okay, if we're going to do this and we're going to start trying to have a baby, I need to figure this out, because there's no way irregular periods and all this other stuff are going to help me have a baby. And if I have PCOS, which at this point I really thought that I did, I just hadn't said anything specific about it or gotten tested for it or anything like that. So I was like, okay, I'll make my gynecologist appointment and I'll mention it in this one. So I went to the gynecologist. She did my normal pap smear, my normal checkup, and everything on that end was fine. And I mentioned to her while I was in there, I said, my husband and I are going to be trying to have a baby soon, and I just wanted to talk about my irregular periods. I have this, that, and the other thing going on. Essentially what she said is, from the sound of my symptoms that I had mentioned and the other things that she had observed with my acne issues and other things like that, she said, it really looks like you have PCOS. And I hadn't even mentioned PCOS at this point, and that was one of my main things, was if she was even going to suggest it. Because when Ellie and Jared were going through that whole thing, her OBGYN never mentioned PCOS, never brought that up. She didn't find out she had it until she went to the fertility specialist. So it made me feel good that was the first thing that my doctor brought up. It made me feel validated, kind of. So I was like, okay, well, first of all, I want to make sure that everything else is okay with my body, and there's nothing else that I should be worrying about getting pregnant, like a thyroid issue or something like that could cause me to have other issues down the line other than the PCOS, and then figuring out for sure if I have PCOS. Because in my mind, I just was like, I know that the doctors aren't going to do anything for me to help me get pregnant until we've been trying for a year unsuccessfully. That's fine, I know that, but I just wanted to know if this is going to be an issue. I want to know ahead of time. I want to know going into it. So if there's anything that I could be doing at home, diet changes, lifestyle changes, vitamins, anything that I could be doing to help sort of regulate my cycle and help us get pregnant on our own, with hopefully not having to go through the other things like Femera or Clomid or something down the line. I just wanted to know that it would be hard now than wait a year and then have to figure out, okay, what's the issue before we can figure out how to fix it. So she said, okay, we'll take a blood test. We'll look at the blood test for the thyroid issue, make sure that you don't have something like that. And then she was also looking at my LH and FSH and estrogen and testosterone levels and all that. She said it would take a couple weeks to get the results. So a couple weeks later I hadn't got a call, and I called them, and anyway, long story short, I eventually got a hold of the doctor. The doctor eventually called me, and she was like, you don't have a thyroid issue, that's fine, your pap was normal, everything else was normal, you're fine in that respect, but your LH and FSH levels and those other things in your blood test do suggest that you might have PCOS, and I just want to have you come in and do an ultrasound to see if we can see the cysts on your ovaries, to see if you definitely do or you definitely don't. So I scheduled that ultrasound, and I went in a few weeks ago. So it's August 1st now. I went in on July 21st for that ultrasound. It was a internal ultrasound, and she was looking around at everything, and she was like, here's your ovary, and I was like, I don't see anything. The only thing I saw was like a big black hole on like one side, on the right side, and I was like, what's that? At first I thought that was my ovary, because that was the first side that she did. But then she went to the other side and marked something else ovary, and I was like, okay, maybe that wasn't my ovary, but then what was that? Anyway, so we finished that. I talked to the doctor. The doctor looks at my ultrasound pictures, and she's basically like, again, based on my LH and FSH levels and my symptoms and the fact that she did see the strand of pearls on my ovaries in the ultrasound, that I probably have PCOS. So we're working on the assumption now that I have PCOS. And she also mentioned that I have a simple cyst on my right ovary that's about 3 centimeters large. She said that's pretty small, and I was like, that's pretty small. 3 centimeters, like that big, doesn't seem pretty small to me. That seems like a pretty significant simple cyst. And if that's not large, then what is a large one? Like this big? Anyway, she said, that's pretty small. That should go away within the next couple months, but we'll have you come in September, and we'll scan again just to make sure that it has gone away. So that's how it's going now. She also mentioned that I should lower my carbohydrate intake, and that should start to try to help this situation. So it's been about 10 or so days of me doing the low carb diet thing, which has been I miss bread. I want a cookie or a donut. Like the second day of it, Andrew came back home. My husband Andrew came home with like 4 chocolate cake donuts from Farm Fresh, and I was like, I want one of those donuts so bad. I was like almost worked into tears because I wanted one of those donuts so bad. But I got through it. I haven't cheated yet. I've been really good. I've been eating my meats and my vegetables and my cheeses and not eating grains or rice or bread or gluten, essentially. And so I've been doing really good with that. I don't know how long that's supposed to take to start to work, but background information, I've been tracking my periods for almost a year now. And there seems to be a pattern to when I'm ovulating and when I'm not. Because when you have PCOS, you're not ovulating all the time. Essentially what's happening is during your cycle, what's supposed to happen is you grow a follicle in one of your ovaries, and the follicle has the egg in it. This is a very simplified explanation of what it is. I'm sure if anyone medical ever watches this, they're going to be like, Jillian, you're not explaining it very well. But anyway, so the follicle grows in your ovary, and inside the follicle is the egg, and it's maturing through the first part of your cycle. And then when it's time for you to ovulate and that egg is mature, the follicle bursts and it pops out into your fallopian tube, and then you've ovulated. What happens when you have PCOS is sometimes the follicle doesn't burst and then it turns into a cyst. So that month you're not ovulating because no egg came out, obviously. It seemed like from the pattern of my cycles in the past year that I would have 2 normal cycles where I ovulated. That would be 35 days long, and periods came on the dot right at that 35-day mark. And then the next 2 periods would be wonky. I wouldn't ovulate, and it would be a really long period where it was like, when's my period gonna come? I don't know. I've had 52-day cycles. I've had 40-day cycles. I've had anywhere in between. And so it seemed like I'm having 2 on, 2 off, 2 on, 2 off. So we started actively trying in June. According to this pattern, June should have been the first wonky month. But we tried anyway, even though the pattern said that it probably wasn't going to happen, but we tried. And around the time when my period was supposed to come, I took a pregnancy test and it was negative. I expected it to be, but then my period didn't come. Around the time my period, I spotted for like a week, but it was hardly ever enough to even put a pad on. It was like, just like when you wiped, you saw it. Maybe that's TMI. But when you wiped, you saw it, but really other than that, you weren't seeing anything. But that happened for like a week and then it stopped. And days and days and days go by, and that cycle ended up being like, I think it was like 57 days, which is like probably a record length for me. And then once I actually got my period for that cycle, that was when I got the scan. I was on like the 3rd or 4th day of my period when I got that scan. So I think that that big cyst was probably, could have been from that month. That could have been a result of that month not ovulating and being so long. Maybe it just like became an engorged cyst or something. I don't know. I'm not a medical professional, but I don't know, that's just what it seemed to me. So anyway, my period ended. I'm using the Ovia Fertility app to track my cycles and track my fertile periods and my cervical fluid and everything else, and do that. And then this month, it seems to be going well. Good thing I started to take my ovulation test a little earlier than my projected fertile window, because my ovulation test read peak fertility yesterday, which would have been like the 2nd day of my fertile window or something like that, or the 1st day of my fertile window. I don't know. We'll see what happens. That's an update as of now, background information about what's going on and how this is working and what we're doing to sort of get it going. But so far it's looking okay. Looks like this month is promising, even though technically this should be the 2nd wonky month and then my next cycle should be normal. But I don't know, maybe the low carb diet has already done a little bit of work. We'll see what happens. Probably won't pick up the camera again until it's time to take a pregnancy test this month, and we'll see what it says. We'll see what happens. All right. Bye.